Hi everyone, I'm so glad you're all here. Today we've invited Keith to join us to give us an overview of our end of operating agreement. And although he's not going to deal with specifics, we'll be doing that at our next meeting, but he's going to give us enough information so that we have a real context and we're going to be able to ask lots of questions. Welcome, Keith.
Thanks very much. It's good to be here. You've got a very special day coming at you, and I'm sure it's going to feel like it's coming at you a lot faster than what you are prepared to deal with, perhaps. It's going to require some early work to prepare for that day, and of course that is the end of your operating agreement. You're going to get in a lot of trouble, frankly, if you don't get ready for that. Or conversely, you might be able to take advantage of some opportunities from it, but again, if you don't plan, you're not going to be able to do that. So, what we're going to do today is talk about when this is all going to happen. Your operating agreement was signed up under the Section 95, what was then the Section 56.1 program, and it runs out in 2016. That's less than 4 years. So you've had 31 years of good time coming to an end. To be really clear, that means your mortgages are gone, right? Great, but it also means your subsidies come to a screeching halt. So those things play off against each other, and the impacts can play out very differently and require significant time to plan for either the benefits or to minimize the risks. So we're going to touch on the risks, starting with the trade-off between the subsidy and the mortgage, which will be the major driver of your potential to generate a surplus or to go into deficit. And that's going to require some more detailed projections that we'll do next meeting. But right now we'll get a first order sense of whether you're going to have some manna from heaven or you're going to have a disaster. And you will have a capital risk. The question is how big. Even if you're solid operationally, future capital repairs could chew up any surplus that you might be able to materialize, and that could put you at risk. So you're going to need a handle on what's coming, when and how much from the capital side, and whether your reserves are going to be able to accommodate that. If things are looking good, you'll have some potential benefits. How are you going to plan for use of those surpluses in future? If things aren't so rosy, what do you do to mitigate those potential risks? What do you do to stay out of trouble? Later, we'll get down to brass tacks and plan for your next steps. And that's going to include a more detailed assessment of where you stand and look at what information you've already got and so forth. And we'll take you through some tools. But that's next meeting. Right now, let's say we'll just take a high-level view of where you are and what all this means to you. Looking at your basic numbers, which I have had a chance to do, you're looking okay. Your situation is fairly typical for providers with 25% geared to income. That's, lots of Section 95 providers are in that same ballpark. And the research does show that it is the percentage of geared to income residents that's the major driver of whether you're going to have trouble or not. If you're under typically 40%, you're going to be okay. Right now, you're receiving $170,000 in subsidy, federal subsidy. That's going to be gone in 4 years, but you're also shelling out $200,000 per year in mortgage payments. So that basic trade-off is to your advantage. Your mortgage is a low amount, but that's because you've got an old mortgage. That mortgage does stop, but again, it's more to your benefit than losing the subsidy. So on paper, you're going to start turning a surplus if everything goes according to plan, but of course, things don't always go to plan, and it starts getting really messy when we take account of your capital needs. Your last BCA said you should be setting aside another $60,000 per year to break even in your replacement reserves to keep your head above water. You haven't been able to do that.
Yes, but we've got some funding for repairs, so we don't need that much anymore.
Yeah, you're able to scoop some SHRP money, and that was great for you as a federal provider. There's not many federal providers that did that. But the fact is you still haven't figured out what that means in terms of setting aside a lower amount in your replacement reserves. And if so, how much lower? So next meeting we'll get into some more details and we'll poke at that some more. You are going to need some technical help to recrunch the numbers in your replacement reserve. Hopefully it will make a difference, having used those SHRP funds. But until you do the analysis, you can't be confident. So right now, taking that $60K at face value, you go from a surplus to a deficit overnight when your operating agreement ends, and nobody's going to be there to help you guys.
I just can't believe believe that after all this time and money, CMHC would just abandon us. I mean, and what about our local council? I mean, our councillor just loves us.
Guys, I can tell you personally, as a consultant who's been active in this area and has done projects for our National Housing Association, looking at actual experience, the feds are not going to help you, even if that means it's not going to happen to you, but even if it meant you had to sell your project, they're not going to step in. And I don't know about you, your service manager may be very friendly right now, but your councillor is just one vote. And of course, your council is already crying the blues about what the impacts are on property taxes for the things that they have to pay for. And they've got no legal obligation for you in 4 years, none whatsoever. So, you know, they're going to be looking at some trade-offs. If I were you, I'd be making sure, as your executive is trying to do here, let's try to get ahead of this. ONFA, others are going to be advocating on your behalf with all levels of government to try to keep funds in the system, but you absolutely have to do whatever you can to protect your organization and your mission with whatever resources are at your disposal, and that's what this exercise is about. So if we can turn things around, and I think you're pretty close to that, but we won't know for sure until we poke at those numbers more carefully next meeting, you may be able to come on the plus side of things, have some benefits. And that's going to mean that you will be able to do some good things with the resources at your disposal. I just put on a list of potential things that you might be able to use a surplus for. And that's more to stir your juices, to get you thinking about some nice things instead of thinking about the nasty things right now. So there will be opportunities if you have a surplus, no more controls, to improve your building, to improve the lives of your tenants, to improve the property and so forth. So we're not going to talk about those right now, but again, those are things that you might be able to get into. Unfortunately, you're going to have to go through the nasty stuff first. We're going to look at your numbers in detail in the next meeting, and that'll help us figure out where you stand and what your options might be. It may be that one solution will get you solvent. Or it may be that you're going to have to look at a combination of things. What you decide is going to be up to you. You're obviously going to have to take account of the magnitude of change that would be required to bring you back to a break-even basis. But I'm sure that your preferences, personal preferences based upon your experience and obviously your goals as an organization, your mission, are going to drive your priorities for what you do. But this slide is just to give you some of the sorts of things that you're going to be looking at by way of options. You could raise your market rents. You could raise your geared to income rents, and clearly that means you're charging people a higher rent based upon their income. You could lower the percentage of geared to income tenants in the building, so again that raises your revenue. You could look at increasing your reserve contributions. You haven't been able to do that now, but maybe you'll be able to do that with some juggling once that mortgage is gone, and then redeploy surpluses into more reserve contributions. And you could look at your maintenance. Are there things that you could be doing now or on a day-to-day basis that would forestall some future capital work? I think it's also important to look at partnerships. So there are folks that you could be working with to reduce costs, operational costs, capital costs, repair costs. Are there potential partners out there that you might be able to work with on your site, again now or post-operating agreement, in terms of some interest in working together and developing your site more intensively. So those are all things that you can be looking at. Again, we'll get back to how much you need to look at those and how you establish some of your priorities at the next meeting. But for now, unless you have any questions, that'll wrap it up.